Hello dear friends and welcome to a new chess class with Kami. And this time we will solve some enigmas together. This is how I like to call the puzzles. And I have chosen for today the puzzles from chess.com. I like them so much. Actually, this is the website which I mostly use for the puzzles with my students during our classes, and that is because they have the possibility to choose between so many themes. You can just click on the theme that you want, or you just can choose all of them, and this is what I did for this study today. And you can also choose the level of difficulty, and for this study I have selected the range between 1400 and 1600 elo points. So let's start, and in this position black is to move. So how do we actually solve these puzzles? How do we find the solutions? Well, it depends on the position, obviously, and since I have selected all themes, everything can happen. Good. So in this position we can see that white has one bishop and two pawns up. And so it means that we should either checkmate or if we can obtain a draw, it would be a good thing in many cases, but not in this one because we can checkmate in this position. So what are we looking at? First of all, we should see how safe the king is. And black's king has a way of escape, but white's king is quite exposed. And then the second thing to see is which pieces can we involve in the attack. And we can see two open lines. We see the g file that is opened and the first rank, and we already have positioned strategically some of our heavy figures there. So we have the queen and the rook. We also have another rook, but probably we won't use it because it can't reach the king. So another thing to see is what are the escaping squares for that king, and we can see that his way of escape, okay, he's got a path through e2, d3. For now the queen is controlling d3, but later on if we move the queen, that will be discovered. And then another thing that we should ask ourselves is, have we got any check in this position? First of all, without sacrificing anything is possible, if it's possible. And indeed we can see that we do have a check on g1. So let's calculate this. Queen to g1 check, the king will be forced to move on e2 and try to escape through d3. So the next check should be able to control both these squares in the same time. And we can imagine that our queen is on g2, that his king is on e2. So, the queen is on g1, right? And the king is on e2. So now we can simply check on f1. And then that is a checkmate because the king will not be able to escape anywhere. So now let's just play it. I suggest that, and this is the only way to do it actually, that we think and calculate the whole variation between before making the move, because then we have to see it and train for a real game, right? If you want to try out some variations before trying them on the computer, you can take a regular chessboard and just play around. But my advice is that you use your personal CPU. Okay, so black is to play in this position, and white is again one knight and one pawn up. So can we maybe try to checkmate white's king? It looks like it's a bit exposed. It's exposed on the A file. It has no retreating square. In order to make room for the king to escape through b3, white should play the pawn to b4, okay? And we can see that in this position the king is in Zugzwang. It can't move. It can move nowhere. So why don't we simply threaten checkmate, because white has no possibility to check our king. Therefore, we can move the rook up. We always look on the open lines when we have the rooks, right? And threatening the checkmate on a6. And when white will try to escape through b3, okay, of course, now if we check on a6, he will just go to b3 and that's it. But now a new line has opened. We can see that the third rank became very weak, and so now we can simply checkmate with rook to c3. Okay, so it's not difficult when we know how to ask the right questions, because then the right answers will come. Good. Again, we can see that this time black is one rook up, maybe some pawns. No, the pawns are equal. Okay, but again, the king is exposed. So, what are the pieces we can involve in the attack? We have a knight that is protected by the bishop. That's good. And we have a queen. Well, potentially the rook could go like this, but you will need more moves to move the bishop, move the rook. So, I guess we should do something very quickly. And so, we have a potential check on e4. Okay, we can just start by calculating the checks. If those don't work, maybe to threaten something, queen g4 to threaten the discovered check. But let's see. Queen to e4 check. Let's see what happens in this case. Well, if the king goes to h6, because he only has two options now, either king h6 or pawn to f5 and stop the check. Okay, so let's imagine our queen is on e4 check. If the king goes to h6, I can see that the queen can infiltrate on h7. Okay, supported by the knight, and now that's a checkmate. Okay, let's say that after queen e4, the king goes to h5. In that case, when we check on h7, the king can go to g4. And now we have a very beautiful checkmate with a pawn. So the pawn, oh, sorry, I moved it. Okay. So the pawn can go to h3 and checkmate the king in that case. So now let's calculate another variation. Queen to e4, what happens if he pushes the pawn to f5 and try to stop the check? Then we have the en passant move, yeah, check. Again, we check the king, so the king will have to choose. Again, we saw what happens if he goes on the h file. So if he takes the pawn, so let's imagine our queen is on e4 and his king goes to f6. Okay, and now we can simply, since a new file has been opened, we take simply on e6, and that is a checkmate, because the king can go nowhere since the knight is defended and the knight itself defends the queen. So it works. So let's see. Check, en passant, check again, king takes, queen e6, checkmate. Very well. So now we have another situation. Again, black is an advantage, materially speaking, but potentially the king can be exposed on the last rank. So let's see, are there any pieces in contact? We see that the queen is attacking the rook that is being defended by the knight, and the knight also is stopping our rook that is located on an open file. So if somehow we can eliminate the defender of the 8th rank and distract the knight from blocking the rook, then we can simply penetrate on the last rank and checkmate the king, because even if the queen goes back, you can simply take it, and that is a checkmate. And all happens with a tempo, every time with a check, so we force black to do what we want. So check and check, queen to d8. And checkmate. And before moving on to the next puzzle, I just want to share with you a very interesting and nice quote. So let's see. When you see a good move, look for a better one. This is what Emanuel Lasker said, and I think this is a very good piece of advice, even when we have to solve enigmas or chess puzzles. And now we can go back to our new puzzle, and let's see, we will solve this immediately. Okay, I can see that the king is already exposed. The castle has been ruined. And there is a queen that potentially wants to check the king, but the queen is under attack, and we would like to cut the communication between the two queens. And my guess is we have a discovered check, and then we can simply involve the bishop in the attack when the queen takes back on g7, and that, my friends, is a checkmate. Okay, I think we can stop here for our today's lesson on the puzzles. I hope that you enjoyed it. Please try the puzzles on chess.com. They really have some nice examples, especially because you can choose between such a large variety of very interesting and funny chess puzzles. Thank you so much again. This is International Master Camila Ciobanu waiting for you on our next chess lesson. All the best.